Hello YouTube viewers, hope you're all doing good and welcome to this video. This video is about deploying EFK stack, everything in Docker containers. Um, Earlier last year, I did a video on ELK, Elasticsearch, Logstash, and Kibana. And many users asked me if I could do a video on EFK, replacing the L bit, which is Logstash for Fluentd. So compared to Logstash, Fluentd is lightweight. You can go to fluentd.org website to learn more about Fluentd, but this one is just for beginners. So I'm just going to give you a quick idea of how you can use Fluentd for log shipping and forwarding. Okay, so EFK, I'm not going to be using virtual machines to install EFK. So when it comes to ELK, the two videos that I did was, let me show you. If I go to YouTube and search for ELK stack CentOS, so that one here, forget about the first one. So that's 2015 version, which no longer works. This one here, ELK stack, the second video for 2018. Basically, I'm not sure. I think I've used a virtual machine, not a Docker container, to install these three different services: Elasticsearch, Logstash, and Kibana. And then um, let me search for the latest video that I did. ELK stack in Docker container. Yep. So that's the one, ELK stack in Docker, the second video here. So that's how to install all your components, Elasticsearch, Logstash, and Kibana, everything in separate Docker containers. So I'll be following that in this video to install Elasticsearch, Fluentd, and okay, so EFK stack. I'll be installing all of these components as Docker containers. And I'll be using a client machine to show you how we can forward the logs to the Fluentd and store it in Elasticsearch and visualize it in Kibana. So for those of you who haven't watched my ELK videos, in a nutshell, EFK, Elasticsearch is an open source search engine where you can store the logs data. Fluentd is for log parsing, log forwarding, that kind of stuff. Kibana is for visualization. The logs from the clients come to Fluentd. Fluentd will forward the log and store it in Elasticsearch. And Kibana will query the Elasticsearch, and we can do various visualization bit in Kibana. Okay, so I've written some notes for EFK stack. So these are the notes. Okay, so Elasticsearch will be a Docker container listening on port 9200. Kibana is another container, will be listening on port 5601. And we're gonna be using Fluentd container Docker image, the official Fluentd Docker image, and run it as a container. Basically, this Fluentd bit is called log aggregator. And there is a log forwarder that you install on each of the nodes that you want to send the logs from. So that's log forwarder, and the application is called the TD agent. I'll show you how you can install those. But for the time being, I'll just explain this nodes here. So basically, this virtual machine and all these three Docker containers will be run on my host machine for this video. My host machine is an Arch Linux-based Manjaro distribution running GNOME edition, if you're interested. So these three containers, and then a CentOS 7 virtual machine as a client. So basically, on each of the nodes, we'll be installing something called TD agent, which listens on port 42185. That's not a hard-coded port. You can specify whatever port you want it to listen. So that's the process, sitting there and watching your node, watching your virtual machine. So basically, you can forward any type of logs to the TD agent locally on this CentOS virtual machine. It can be system logs, var log messages, var log, syslog. It can be Apache logs, MySQL logs, Nginx, Postgres, or any application logs. So these are all different sources of data that you can forward. And you're basically forwarding all the logs or whatever you want to a local agent here in the same machine. So that agent is responsible for forwarding all the logs it collects to a log aggregator, which is Fluentd. And Fluentd sends it to the Elasticsearch, and we can visualize it from Kibana. Okay, so the Fluentd bit, we can set this Fluentd bit in a cluster mode, say to, I've also got notes for that. Yep. Okay, so log aggregator, we can set up multiple Fluentd, and we can configure the TD agent, the log forwarder agent on each of the nodes to forward the logs to one of the log aggregators. So in the configuration file, we'll specify these two servers, and one will be primary, other will be secondary, which means this will be active and this will be backup. Um, okay, so what happens when this active node fails? At any point, the log forwarders from all the clients, all the nodes, will forward to just one Fluentd server. And if this Fluentd server goes down for some reason, the TD agent will start forwarding the logs to the backup server, which becomes active then. And then when it comes back up, it will start sending it to the active ones. Okay, so that's the thing. And what happens when both of these servers are down? So all the source here we've configured, the RSys log or any application logs that we are sending the data to the local agent. So it will be buffered here until it flushes the buffer to the to one of the log aggregators. So if these servers are active, then the logs will be flushed, forwarded to the respective server. If it can't reach any of the servers, it will be buffered in this TD agent until the Fluentd, one of the Fluentd servers becomes available. Okay, and the other thing I wanted to mention is the connection between the log forwarder and the log aggregator is plain, no encryption. And if you want, you can set up SSL encryption. So the connection between the log forwarder and the log aggregators are secured. But in this video, to keep it short, I'm not going to go into that SSL secure connection. For that, you need to generate the certificate, key pair, and so on. I'll think about doing it in a separate video, just for sake of keeping this one very short. Okay, so this is what we are going to do now. First, let's start the Docker containers, all these 3 Docker containers. For that, what I'm going to do is cd to play directory, and I'm going to git clone my ELK GitHub repository. Don't worry, I'll paste the link in the video description. So that's the ELK. I know the video is about EFK, but I just want to put everything related in one repository instead of creating multiple repositories. So ELK, cd to ELK, and in here cd to docker-efk. Okay, in here you've got the docker compose.yaml file. Let's take a look at it. Okay, so docker compose.yaml, and we have 3 services. The first one is Fluentd, second one is Elasticsearch, and third one is Kibana. So Kibana is running on port 5601, which is exposed to localhost, 9200 for Elasticsearch, and 24224 for Fluentd. So basically, if you don't specify a protocol, it's TCP, and because this one needs to listen on both TCP and UDP, You have to expose both the protocols. If you see the Elasticsearch and Kibana, we are using the image, the official image directly. But for Fluentd, we're not using an image. We are building it from the Docker file. That's because we need to do one extra step. Um, if I go to Fluentd directory, and there's a Docker file, vi docker file. So basically, that's the image from Fluent slash Fluentd. So that's the official image. On top of the official image, we need to do one extra step. That's install the Elasticsearch plugin. So unless you install this plugin, um, you won't be able to forward the logs to the Elasticsearch. You won't be able to forward um, from Fluentd to Elasticsearch. So for that, we need to install the Elasticsearch plugin. So that's what this Docker file does. So when we do Docker Compose up, it will automatically build the Docker file for us. Okay, so there is another directory conf for Fluentd, and I've got the fluent.conf file. So that's the configuration for this log aggregator. Let's see what's in there. Fluent.conf. So basically what we are doing here is defining source type, so where we are going to receive the data from. So type is forward, and the port is 24224. So we are listening on port 24224, whatever coming on that port, um, that's the source. Okay, so match star dot star star. So whatever comes in the port 24224, what we are going to do with that. Okay, so we're going to store that in Elasticsearch. Host is Elasticsearch, port is 9200. Since I'm using Docker Compose, all the services can access one another by the service name. So Elasticsearch is the service name, so we can access the Elasticsearch host using the service name and a bunch of other options. Okay, so that's the configuration. Now let's go ahead and start all the containers. Docker Compose up -d. Okay, so it's also creating a default network and it's creating a volume. Okay, let's look at the status. Docker Compose PS. Okay, cool. So we've got Elasticsearch, Fluentd, and Kibana containers running. Elasticsearch 9200, Fluentd 24224, Kibana 5601. So all seems to be running. Let's look at the log for each of them. Docker Compose logs Kibana. Okay, so that's the log for Kibana. Status changed from yellow to green, and the status is ready. So Kibana is happy, no problem. Docker Compose logs Elasticsearch. That's a log for Elasticsearch, and the Elasticsearch also looks okay. Docker Compose logs, and finally let's look at Fluentd. Okay, so that's the Fluentd log, and it's using the configuration that I shown you. Okay, so Fluentd worker is now running worker 0, which means, so this is the first Fluentd server, so that's worker equals 0. It's not in a cluster mode. Okay, so all of them are running, and we are exposing all the ports to the local host. Sudo netstat -nltp grep for Docker. So those are the Docker proxy forwarding the ports. 9200, Elasticsearch, Fluentd, and Kibana. So we're all good with respect to all these three Docker containers. So the Docker containers stuff is okay. So now let's go to the configuring the virtual machine. And before that, let's go ahead and see if we can access the Kibana dashboard. Localhost 5601. Okay, try our sample data. Let's explore on on our own. Okay, right. We could access the Kibana dashboard. That's good. And now let's go to the client side. Let's install TD agent and configure RSS log. Maybe in one of the future videos, I'll show you how you can forward the other application logs. But for this video, I'm going to stick with just the system logs, how you can forward system log to the local TD agent, which will then forward to Fluentd and then to Elasticsearch and so on. Okay, I've been using Vagrant and VirtualBox to create virtual machines, but recently I started using LXD, which is a very lightweight hypervisor. It's not Docker, it's not a complete virtualization. It uses the host's kernel, so LXD. I'll do a video on LXD. It's basically lightweight than a complete virtualization like VirtualBox. Um, and it's not Docker in the sense Docker is meant for application isolation. So you create an application, you run a process in an isolated namespace, example Nginx, Apache, or MySQL. But LXD you can run an entire operating system as a virtual machine. To you, um, an LXD machine is a bare metal machine. Even though it's virtualized, it basically uses the underlying hardware, not like a virtual hardware when you use VirtualBox. Okay, so LXC list. I've just got one machine. Let's create a CentOS machine. LXC launch images CentOS 7. Give it a name, EFK client, for example. Creating EFK client, starting EFK client. See, that's it. Our virtual machine is ready. It's a complete virtual machine. LXC list. So EFK client is running, and I've got the IP address if I want to connect to, but there's a cool way to connect. LXC exec EFK client bash. Boom. I'm inside the virtual machine. So go cat etc red hat release. Okay, so we are on CentOS version 7.6. It's a complete virtual machine. It's not using any extra overhead. It's just using the operating system's kernel. Say it's a CentOS machine, and if I do uname -r, it says 419 Manjaro, so it uses my host machine's kernel. Free -m 16 gig, which is my host machine's memory, and proc 8 CPU. So basically, it's like my physical machine at the moment. Right, PS -ef. You won't see much because this is just a container and a very limited number of processes. One thing I wanted to do is I need to install sudo yum install. As this is a container, it doesn't come with all the packages, so I only need sudo because I need to install this package. If you go to their website, they will give you a script that you can run, which requires sudo command. Yum install sudo -y. Right, sudo installed. And what we're going to do now is we are going to install the TD agent log forwarder. Let's head to our web browser and type install Fluentd CentOS. Installing Fluentd using RPM package. Click that one and copy that script there. So basically what this is going to do is it's going to add a yum repository, and then it will install the TD agent package for us. Right, it has completed the installation. Systemctl status TD agent. That's disabled. Let's enable that service. Systemctl enable TD agent. Before starting it, we need to configure TD agent to tell it where the log aggregators are, and what type of sources we are going to look for, and so on. Okay, so in my GitHub repository under docker-ef, there is this miscellaneous directory. If you go in there, there is a single file. Let's take a look at that file, clients.tdagent.conf. Basically, it's very simple. So similar to the fluent.conf, for the log aggregator, we are going to define two sections. So this source section is for the syslog. So type is syslog. ID is just like an identifier for these for the source. If you are adding multiple data sources, you would have multiple source section, and you can identify each of the sources using the ID tag. So when you are searching for a specific source type in your Kibana, you can specify the ID. So we are listening on port 42185. Tag is the machine name. Let me call this. Nope. I'll just copy this and paste it in the actual machine. So I'm in the GitHub repository directory. So I'll copy that, and the configuration file for TD agent is at TD. Before that, I'll show you etcm.repos.d. So td.repos. So that's the m repository that the script added. Okay. So vi etc td agent tdagent.conf. So that's the agent's configuration file. So there are few configurations already, and there are a bunch of examples that you can see for different types of sources, for different type of actions that you can do. But I'm going to delete everything there. I'm going to copy this one from source to the match section. Okay, let me close this one. So in here, the source section is type is syslog, and we're going to listen on port 42185. So this will be UDP. Tag is CentOS vmo1.system. So this tag will appear on your ElasticSearch or Kibana search. EFK client.system, basically because it's a system log. Match, what we are going to do, we are going to forward, and we give it a name identifier, and here is the bit server where you're going to forward. So at the moment we've only got one Fluentd log aggregator, but if you've got more than one in an active backup setup, you'll have to use primary and secondary tag in here. Okay, so host, the IP address of the host running the Fluentd server will be my host IP address, which is 192.168.1.10. Okay, and now let's start it. Systemctl, did we enable it? Systemctl is enabled. TD agent, yeah, that's enabled. Let's start it. Systemctl start TD agent. Systemctl status TD agent, that's running. And if you want to look at the log files, for some reason it will be in var log td agent. There you can see the buffer, so which I talked about earlier. When the log aggregators are not available, it's going to buffer the data that it receives from various sources, and then when the Fluentd server becomes available, it will flush its buffer and send all the logs to the aggregator. Okay, td agent.log, and that's the configuration that we created. Okay, so it's running. Fluentd worker is now running, no problem. And you can see here the forwarding server is the IP address of the Fluentd server, and the port is 24224, which is this one, 24224. Okay, the agent is running. What we got to do now is we have to configure our syslog to send the logs to the TD agent in localhost. Let's do that. vi etc rsyslog.conf, go to the end of the file and do star dot star, which means forward everything to a single at symbol, which means UDP. If you put double at, which is TCP, we're going to do it on UDP and forward it to the local host 127.0.0.1, and the IP address, sorry, the port number is 4142185, I think. 42185, yep. Okay, and now we can save the file 42185. Yep, that looks okay. And systemctl restart r syslog. Yum install -y netstat. Sorry, nettools. Yum install -y nettools netstat -nlup. Yeah, there it is, 42185. A Ruby process. Okay, so now we've configured the rsyslog to forward the logs to TD agent here. The TD agent has been configured to send the logs to Fluentd on port 24224. So I think we've completed all the setup. The only thing remaining is we need to go to Kibana and create an index pattern and start visualizing the logs. Let's see if everything went okay. We should be able to see something in Kibana. Okay, Kibana, go to discover and define an index pattern star. We've got one already, log stash. So I think it's picking up this index pattern because in the Fluentd configuration, if I go back to Fluentd, we're using the tag log stash somewhere, log stash format true. Maybe because of this, we are seeing this type of index prefix. Okay, click next step. We have to select the time field, timestamp, create index pattern. That's created, and now if you go to discover, there you go. We've already started seeing logs from EFK client, which is our CentOS 7 machine. And if you look at this one, this is little different, worker, and these are host, which means the Fluentd client. The nodes that are sending logs to, it's basically these virtual machines. Those are host, and Fluentd itself is a worker. So that one is worker. Fluentd worker is now running worker 0. You can see all these things. Okay, let's try and add a filter. Host is EFK client. Save. There you go. And everything is EFK client. And if you've got multiple hosts, you can add a filter to see login trace from a specific host. All looking good. And let's do a final testing. So I'm in this VM. Let's make a log entry and see if it's appearing in Kibana. Logger -t jungle. Hello, this is from the EFK client for testing. Tail -f var log messages. Okay, so that's the entry we just made. Let's see if it's showing up in the Kibana. Refresh, 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 refresh. It's going to take a little while. It will appear shortly here. Alright, there you go. We've got that entry. It took about 30 seconds. I'm not sure. It might be the configuration. The logs will be temporarily buffered in the TD agent, and then when it sends to the log aggregator, it might be buffered for a while in the log aggregator before it appears in the Elasticsearch, so on. But finally, it made its way to the Elasticsearch. We just search for jungle. So that's the entry we made for testing. Okay, so that's it I wanted to show you in this video really. Okay, cool. I hope you found it useful. If you don't understand, or if you can't follow any of the concepts that I discussed in this video, please leave me a comment. It's straightforward. It's very simple, and running everything in a Docker container just took less than 5 seconds to bring up all these services. The only thing you have to bear in mind is you can't use the official image as it is for the Fluentd service. You have to install the Elasticsearch plugin to be able to forward the logs to the Elasticsearch. So just to recap, EFK, Elasticsearch for storing the logs, Kibana for visualizing the logs, Fluentd for log shipping, log forwarding, parsing, and so on. Fluentd acts as an intermediary, so it can gather sources from multiple different data sources, and then it's a unified logging, and it sends that to the Elasticsearch. Fluentd listens on port 24224, both on TCP and UDP. And all these Docker containers were started as a single Docker compose command. And on the CentOS VM machine, on the client machine, you install td agent. It's just running a script which adds an yum repository and installs td agent, and then you configure the td agent to tell where it has to forward the logs to, and also what sources it's going to listen for. So in this case, we've added rsyslog as a source type and forward it to the Fluentd. So the port is 42185 and it's UDP. And we updated the rsyslog configuration to forward everything to the local TD agents. Okay, so I haven't talked about firewall. This demo, I didn't turn on firewall. So if you've got firewall enabled, please make sure you open the respective ports. As everything is local in here, you don't have to worry about the firewall here. So all these processes can send to the port here for the TD agent. You don't have to worry about firewall. But here, for Fluentd, Elasticsearch, and Kibana, you would have to open these ports so that the clients can access. The client only needs to access Fluentd on port 24224. So if you just open that port and also 5601, so that you can access the Kibana dashboard from any of the machines outside of the host actually running these containers, then please open these two ports. Okay, cool. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you liked it, please share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I've got few videos coming. I've already recorded a couple of videos for the Fluent, no, sorry, the file beat and metric beat, how we can monitor the system metrics, system logs, Apache metrics, Apache logs using file beat and metric beat and Elasticsearch and Kibana. So I made that as a two separate video, one for system log and metrics, one for Apache logs and metrics. I'll be releasing those videos in the coming weeks, so stay tuned. And thank you so much for your time today. I will see you in my next video. Bye bye.